the ocean, a realm of breathtaking beauty, profound mystery, and boundless allure. For centuries, humanity has been drawn to its shimmering surface, wondering what secrets lie beneath. This deep, primal fascination has fueled countless dreams of exploration, a relentless drive to venture into the unknown, to conquer one of Earth's last great frontiers. But with this allure has always come immense peril. The silent, crushing depths guard their secrets fiercely, and the path of underwater exploration is paved with both triumph and tragedy. Today, we journey into two such stories. Separated by nearly 2 centuries, by revolutions in technology, and by vastly different ambitions, these accounts are nonetheless united by the unyielding spirit of human endeavor, the unforgiving nature of the deep, and the ultimate price of catastrophe. We'll explore the tale of a hopeful 18th century carpenter driven by a personal dream, and the Cold War saga of a mighty nuclear submarine lost in the line of duty. These are echoes from the abyss, reminders of the courage, the folly, and the sacrifice that mark our quest to understand the world beneath the waves. John Day's 1774 unfortunate dive. Our first story takes us back to the 1770s, an era alive with the spirit of invention and discovery, a time when bold individuals, often working outside established science, dared to dream of the impossible. In England, a carpenter and wheelwright named John Day harbored such a dream: to conquer the undersea world. Day was not a trained engineer, nor a seasoned mariner. Contemporaries described him as an ingenious man, full of bold and unshakable confidence, yet also illiterate and indigent, and perhaps obstinate in his opinions. He yearned to build a submersible chamber, not for science, but to find fame and fortune. To attract a backer for his ambitious and arguably reckless scheme, Day made grand claims. He said he'd already spent 6 hours underwater in a previous vessel in East Anglia, and some reports even circulated that he'd managed an astonishing 24 hours at a depth of 300 feet. Though there were no recorded witnesses to these feats, his tales of underwater prowess captured the imagination of a Plymouth gambler named Christopher Blake. Blake saw an opportunity, an affair by which money might be won. He agreed to finance Day, putting up £340 for the construction of a unique vessel and promising Day 10% of any winnings from wagers placed on the success of the dive. The stage was set for a high-stakes gamble. John Day bet he could descend 130 feet beneath the waves and remain there for a full 12 hours. His ambition was undeniable, but it was a confidence that perhaps outstripped the scientific understanding of his day. The vessel for this daring attempt was a 50-ton sloop named the Maria. Day, with the help of a Plymouth shipwright, modified her, building a wooden air chamber within her hull, roughly 12 feet long, 9 feet wide, and 8 feet high. This chamber, his sanctuary beneath the waves, was reinforced with stout stanchions. The plan for descent and ascent hinged on a clever, if ultimately flawed, ballast system. The Maria's hold contained 10 tons of limestone. Crucially, another 20 tons of stone ballast, in 2 10-ton lots, were attached beneath the keel, rigged with a mechanism that Day could supposedly release from inside his chamber. Once Day was sealed inside, a final 20 tons of ballast would be loaded, bringing the total to 60 tons. Enough, he calculated, to sink the 50-ton sloop. After 12 hours, he would release the external 20 tons, leaving 40 tons of ballast, and the Maria, now lighter, would float back to the surface. His life support was rudimentary: some water, biscuits, and a single candle for light, a candle that would steadily consume the precious air in his sealed chamber. A hammock was also provided for his long vigil. For communication with the surface, should he need it, Day devised a system of 3 colored buoys: white for very well, red for indifferent, and black for very ill, which he could release from within. This was his only link to the world above. But John Day's ingenious machine was riddled with fatal flaws. He had, it said, the calculation of the trim completely wrong, and critically, overestimated the ballast required. More dangerously, he seemed to have little grasp of the immense water pressure he would face. At 130 feet, the pressure would be over 60 pounds per square inch. A colossal force that a square-sided wooden box, like his chamber, was ill-equipped to withstand. Furthermore, the limited air supply was a critical oversight, compounded by the oxygen-consuming candle. Ironically, the very element of oxygen had only been formally discovered that same year, highlighting the limits of contemporary knowledge. While Day's concept of droppable ballast was pioneering for its time, the Maria was, in essence, a vessel doomed by a profound gap between ambition and understanding. On June 22, 1774, the day of the attempt arrived. The Maria, newly painted red, was towed out into Plymouth Sound, north of Drake's Island. A sense of spectacle filled the air as crowds gathered on the Hoe to witness the event. Even a Royal Navy frigate, HMS Orpheus, was on standby, a testament to the curiosity and perhaps official interest in Day's venture. John Day climbed into his chamber, carrying his meager provisions. The hatch was sealed. The final 20 tons of ballast were loaded. And then, as Christopher Blake moved amongst the crowd taking final bets, the Maria began her descent. Spectators reported seeing a large bubbling of the sea moments after the vessel slipped beneath the waves, a grim, fleeting sign of what was likely a catastrophic failure. The hours ticked by. The crowd waited, but no signal buoy, not white, not red, not black, ever broke the surface. The 12-hour mark passed, then a day, then more. It became agonizingly clear that John Day was not coming back. He had become the first person in recorded history to die in a submarine accident. In the aftermath, a peculiar episode unfolded. A month after the dive, a London physician named Nikolai Detlev Falk rushed to Plymouth. Falk, reflecting the limited medical understanding of the era concerning extreme environments, harbored a bizarre hope. He theorized that the cold water might have preserved Day in a state of suspended animation, his blood kept in a good condition, and that if the body could be recovered quickly, he might even be reanimated. Falk privately funded dredging operations to find the wreck, but his efforts were in vain. Neither John Day's body nor the remains of the Maria were ever found. The vessel, it's widely believed, was crushed by the immense water pressure long before it could have reached the seabed, disintegrating into the depths. John Day's tragic dive, born of ambition and a gambler's wager, ended as an enduring maritime mystery, a somber footnote in the early perilous history of underwater exploration. The Soviet nuclear submarine K-8's 1970 catastrophe. Nearly 2 centuries after John Day's solitary plunge, the world was a vastly different place. The Cold War raged, a silent, tense standoff between superpowers, and the oceans had become a critical theater of operations. Here, a new kind of Leviathan patrolled the depths, the nuclear submarine. Our second story concerns one such vessel, the Soviet submarine K-8, and a disaster that unfolded on a scale unimaginable in Day's time. The K-8 was a Project 627 Kit-class submarine, known by NATO as the November class. Commissioned in 1960, she was one of the Soviet Union's first-generation nuclear-powered attack submarines. These were formidable machines, over 100 meters long, displacing nearly 5,000 tons when submerged, and capable of speeds around 30 knots underwater, powered by 2 nuclear reactors. However, this early generation of Soviet nuclear boats was also known for being noisy and, ominously, prone to accidents. The K-8 herself had a troubling history. In 1960, she suffered a serious loss of coolant incident in the Barents Sea, resulting in a significant radiation leak that contaminated the entire vessel and exposed many crewmen to dangerous levels of radiation. This earlier brush with disaster was a chilling precursor to the events of 1970. In April 1970, the K-8 was participating in Arcane 70, an unprecedented Soviet naval exercise. This was the largest peacetime naval operation in history up to that point, involving some 200 ships from all 4 Soviet fleets deployed worldwide. Arcane 70 was a massive display of the Soviet Navy's burgeoning global reach and military might, a clear signal in the high-stakes chess game of the Cold War. As was standard procedure for such deployments, the K-8 carried a deadly arsenal. 4 of her torpedoes were tipped with nuclear warheads. The presence of these weapons meant that any incident aboard the K-8 carried risks far beyond the immediate safety of her crew. It held the potential for environmental contamination and heightened geopolitical tension. The catastrophe began on April 8, 1970. The K-8 was operating at a depth of 120 meters in the Bay of Biscay, a treacherous stretch of water off the coasts of Spain and France. Suddenly, fires erupted simultaneously in 2 separate compartments, numbers 3 and 7. The cause? Electrical short circuits. The blaze spread with terrifying speed through the submarine's air conditioning system. In the face of the inferno, both of the K-8's nuclear reactors were shut down, either automatically by safety systems or by the crew. This critical action, while preventing a potential nuclear meltdown, plunged the submarine into darkness and silence, robbing her of main power. Captain Second Rank Vsevolod Besonov, the K-8's commander, initially ordered his entire crew to abandon ship. By this point, 8 sailors were already dead, trapped in compartments that had been sealed to prevent the fire from spreading or to control flooding. Some of the crew, reportedly 43 men, managed to transfer to a Bulgarian merchant vessel and a Soviet repair ship that had rushed to the scene. The K-8, crippled and powerless, surfaced amidst the waves. What happened next speaks volumes about the pressures of the Cold War and the perceived value of such a strategic asset. The order to abandon ship was countermanded, reportedly by High Command in Moscow. A towing vessel was on its way, and the K-8 was to be salvaged. 52 crewmen, led by Captain Besonov himself, reboarded the stricken submarine. Their mission, to assist with the tow and fight to save their vessel. For the next 80 grueling hours, these men waged a desperate battle against impossible odds. The K-8 was a powerless, floating tomb. They toiled in stormy seas with no electricity, failing air circulation, and no water evacuation systems. Lethal carbon monoxide from the smoldering fires filled the compartments, and the sea relentlessly seeped in as the submarine's battered hull gradually succumbed to flooding. It was an ordeal of unimaginable hardship, a testament to their courage and devotion to duty, played out in the cold, dark, and unforgiving Atlantic. But their heroic efforts were ultimately in vain. On April 12, 1970, the K-8, overwhelmed by the flooding and damage, finally surrendered to the sea. As she was being towed in rough weather, the submarine slipped beneath the waves for the last time. All 52 men who had reboarded, including Captain Vsevolod Besonov, went down with their ship. In total, 73 crewmen survived the disaster, rescued before the final plunge. The K-8 came to rest on the abyssal plain of the Bay of Biscay, at a staggering depth of 4,680 meters, nearly 15,350 feet. This extreme depth made any prospect of recovering the submarine, or her deadly cargo, impractical. And so, the K-8 became the first Soviet nuclear submarine ever lost at sea. With her, on the ocean floor, lie her 2 nuclear reactors and the 4 nuclear-tipped torpedoes she carried. For his extraordinary courage and sacrifice, Captain Besonov was posthumously awarded the title Hero of the Soviet Union. But the K-8's legacy is more than a tale of heroism. It is a silent, radioactive question mark at the bottom of the Atlantic, a stark reminder of the Cold War's perilous reach and its lingering, unseen consequences. Today, both the Maria and the K-8 lie unseen beneath the sea, centuries apart, yet equally claimed by its depths. One was built from wood and hope, the other from steel and strategy. Both ended in silence. Their stories remind us that no matter how far we advance, the ocean remains a frontier that humbles us. Beneath its surface lie not just wrecks, but echoes of ambition, sacrifice, and the timeless pull of the unknown.